Today on CityCast Philly, it's the Friday News Roundup. We're talking about SEPTA remaking its bus system, an investigation over asbestos found in Philly schools, and street sweeping is coming back. It's Friday, March 24th. I'm Trinae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Thomas Fitzgerald, transportation reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Good morning, Trinae.
And Aaron Moselle, housing and community development reporter for WHYY's Plan Philly. Hey, it's great to see you again, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, it's been a while. Great to see you, Trinae.
Yeah. Okay, before we get into the news of this week, I've got to start by saying today is National Cheesesteak Day. And I've got to ask, where's the best place to get a cheesesteak? Tom?
Oh, man, that's like the hardest question in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I always liked Jim's Steaks.
Me too.
Kind of had a fire though. So
yeah, right. I know. I missed that.
I'm sure they'll be back stronger than ever. I like Jim's.
Yes, on South Street.
Yeah.
Aaron, what about you?
So I grew up with Del Sandro's, but now it's become such a madhouse that I almost never want to contend with the crowd. And I'm in South Philly, so we're going to go with Cosme's.
Okay. Now, what type of cheese do you guys like on your cheesesteaks?
I'm a provolone guy, but I know that's not the standard.
Yeah, it's got to be provolone. Yeah.
I'm sorry, whiz is not found in nature. It just isn't. I mean, no offense to people that like whiz. It's all good.
Yeah.
I don't judge, but to me, I'm not eating it.
Okay, and do you guys have any other toppings that you like on your cheesesteak?
You got to have onions and ketchup. Mm-hmm. I have recently crossed over potentially into the dark side, putting some mayo. Some people have issues with that. I think it's great, especially if you just do like a steak sandwich and you're not doing the cheese. It kind of helps the thing go down.
Yeah. I like that extra buttery taste on the bread. And I have a theory. If the bread's not right, the sandwich is not right.
I agree. I think the bread is key.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the sandwich. Oh, and I like mushrooms too.
Oh, okay. You're getting fancy now.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some top stories of this week. Tom, I want to start with your story that you've covered recently. SEPTA's bus system, it's getting its first overhaul since 1964?
That's right, yeah.
That's like, 59 years ago? And, a lot of riders have been voicing their concerns with the entire system. What's happening here?
It's a long, tangled story, but I'll shorten it. So, the buses, they travel, on most routes, like an average of 8 miles an hour. It's been getting worse, and the bus system lost 20% of its riders from 2011 through 2018. I think that's the figure that they look at. And so they knew they had to do something. Pandemic just accelerated that. And the idea was, because it hadn't been looked at since 1964, like you mentioned, the routes just kind of grew longer and more circuitous, and then they put the speed and the reliability just weren't there. So they started out by redesigning the routes and making them shorter, fewer turns, more arterial roads, the bigger roads to use. And people hated it, or a lot of people did, the first proposal. But it would have required transferring from, a less frequent bus to a more frequent bus, or the L in the Broad Street line. But a lot of people didn't like transferring so much. And then SEPTA heard their cries and came out, I guess, Monday. It came out Monday with Bus Revolution 2.0, which seems a little slightly less revolutionary
Wait,
because
SEPTA's calling it the Revolution 2.0?
oh, I'm calling it 2.0.
Oh, okay.
They call the program Bus Revolution,
Okay.
and like Vive la France or whatever. But which also kind of, actually, I learned from a lot of people that I talked to over the months they've been working on this. That revolution was a word that kind of scared them.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like, well, I don't want a revolution in my life. So
I just want a bus.
I want the bus to come and get me
Right.
to wherever. Yeah,
Yeah.
truly.
And so, what I also found interesting in your story is that the original plan would have cut bus routes from the current 125 to 99 routes, but this new draft has 105 routes.
Yeah, they put some back. They kind of, yeah, they were going to eliminate routes that were not productive, meaning like, they were really low ridership. And that, by taking that line of buses from column A and putting it in column Z, the area, column Z would get more service and that one would go away. But people hated that too.
Wow, really interesting. And I'm it's also interesting that riders spoke up and they heard their calls to keep their buses. When I used to live in North Philly, I used to take the 33 into work downtown. But Tom, like when can we expect like a final plan to come out?
Is anything ever final?
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it's supposed to be final end of the summer. Then it goes through some formal hearings that SEPTA by law has to do,
Hmm.
where its board will then vote on it. They're now saying it won't really be implemented. The rider won't see the new system until maybe mid 2024.
All right. Another story that I found interesting this week came from you, Aaron. It's something called the source of income discrimination. Can you tell us what that is? I've read that in your piece that this is something that's illegal, that's happening with tenants and landlords, but it's common. What's happening here?
Yeah, the city has had a law on the books for more than 40 years now that basically makes it illegal for landlords to discriminate based on the way a prospective tenant would pay for their apartment. The most common example is someone with a housing voucher. And for those who don't know, that's basically a rent subsidy through the federal government that heavily
Is that like
subsidizes.
Section 8?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's formerly known as Section 8. And so basically, folks who have that voucher just have to pay, 30% of their adjusted monthly income, and then HUD picks up the rest. The federal government picks up the rest, meaning that they pay the landlord the rest. There are some limits to how much, in terms of the total rent, they're willing to pay. So basically, this has been going on for some time, where landlords, these are private landlords on the housing market, are turning away folks if they want to pay using a voucher. They may use other reasons for turning them away. They may say, hey, it's your credit score, or hey, it's your criminal history.
Mm.
Sometimes they straight up will say in writing that it's, we don't accept vouchers, and that's illegal in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that's been pretty tough to enforce or even be proactive about. The city's commission on Human Relations is responsible for enforcing it. But they have 6 total investigators to investigate all kinds of issues, including employment issues, housing issues, public accommodations issues, and so they're pretty stretched pretty thin. And so City Council had a hearing this week, and folks from the Human Relations Commission said, "Hey, we'd love to have more investigators so we could tackle more of these instances, and also, more importantly, be more proactive about it. They want to use what are called testers, which is when they kind of have people pretend to be renters.
Oh,
Some
I
people
see.
pretend to have a voucher, some people don't. They see what the reaction is.
Right.
And that's what some folks did as part of this lawsuit against a fairly big landlord pretty recently. They kind of went out and saw what happened when they went to certain properties. And they ended up settling with that company. The company agreed to not exclude folks with, or advertise, I should say, that they don't accept Section 8.
Right, but you just said this happened with a big landlord, but there's small independent landlords where this might still happen. So where can tenants file a complaint?
Yeah, I mean, right now, as I said, they file a complaint with the Human Relations Commission, the city's Human Relations Commission. That does take some time. No big surprise there. Yeah, I mean, city council at this point is just sort of looking for possible solutions, because this is not new for 2023. This has been going on for some time. The housing voucher program has been around for some time. But it's coming to a head at this point because the city is experiencing an affordable housing crisis, and this just makes it that much harder for folks to keep a roof over their head. These are the most vulnerable, the lowest income residents in Philadelphia. It's tough enough as it is to find a landlord on the private market willing to rent to you. If you have a voucher, that's a long-standing issue. But on top of that, if you add this kind of discrimination, it makes your search even harder. And it puts people in difficult situations where they need a house, they can't afford to pay full freight, and then sort of either get a landlord to accept the voucher, or they may be looking at a homeless shelter, they may be looking at the street.
Wow.
Just a quick question: what's happening with rents in general? Like, in other words, are they on an upswing and landlords, can get the market rate? So is that part of it, or are there other reasons?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, rents in Philadelphia did go up during the pandemic, though not nearly as drastically as other major cities, like Austin or New York. But there is still an affordability issue, mostly tied to folks not having jobs that pay them enough, rather than the apartments being unaffordable. However, with voucher holders, for example, the voucher is worth a certain amount of money. And those limits are set by the federal government, and that precludes some folks from renting certain places because they can't cover the full freight of the rent, and that's becoming tougher. That's coming up more and more because apartments are becoming more expensive. So it's getting tougher to find a place where your voucher covers enough where the landlord is willing to do it.
Another story that caught my eye this week came from Kristen Graham, education reporter at the Inquirer, about the school district is going to begin investigations about the asbestos that's been found in some Philly schools. And it's been reported that Superintendent Tony Watlington Sr. Said that, he sent an email to staff and quote, "In the coming weeks and months, we anticipate more damaged asbestos to be identified." And he also says that, school officials knew about these issues for at least 2 years. And this all came out from earlier this month. Building 21, which is a school out in West Oak Lane, had shut and closed after, a routine inspection found damaged asbestos. But this is the first year for Wellington. And so, he's like coming in and like just saying like, listen, we understand there's been some gaps in the record keeping. But, he's holding, the district accountable. And the reality is that the district has like 300 schools, and most of them were built in a time when asbestos was common. It was like a very common building material. So this is definitely something that is going to be ongoing, and I'm definitely going to keep my eye on it. Tom, let's go back to you. This is what really blew my mind this week because I was looking forward to seeing an extended route or more public transportation going all the way to King of Prussia, but that's not happening. Why?
Well, first, I guess the precipitating thing was, the plan for them to build this thing always was going to rely on infrastructure grants from the Federal Transit Administration, and they got turned down for the next stage of the project that would have got it shovel ready, as they say, to begin construction work supposedly next year or 2025. Sorry. Then the cost estimate, that it had always been estimated to cost like $1 billion. Then it was 1.2. Then it was 1.8. Now it's 3 because time goes on. There were snafus, and they were going to have to buy more properties from people that were in the way. And they said they just couldn't do it, and there wasn't enough monetary support from the counties, even Montgomery County, that was going to directly benefit to enable SEPTA to, because like the transit agencies have to, with their states and their localities, they got to put up about half.
Mm-hmm.
With all their other needs, they said, we just can't do it. We got to pull the plug.
Yeah. So does that mean like we may never see this again, or it's just going to take some time and some, fresh money to come in?
Well, anything can happen. I mean,
Yeah.
It's definitely off for now and for the foreseeable future, but all the plans will exist. And if circumstances were to change, yeah, they could bring it back again, and maybe the feds would view it more favorably.
Got it. Aaron, I want to talk about another story that you've been keeping your eye on as the housing reporter is the saga around the University City townhomes in West Philly, which is around 40th and Market Streets. We've talked about that on the show as well, but at this point, it seems like most of the residents have left. But what are they going to do with that property?
Yeah, most of the residents are out, as you said. Tying back to the earlier conversation, they all got housing vouchers so that they could move and rent on the private market instead of living in an affordable housing complex, because the owners of that complex decided to stop their contract with the federal government and put the place up for sale.
But like you just said, they are going to probably experience some issues with getting into the private market. But yeah, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been a struggle for most of them, especially if they don't want to live in Philadelphia. Technically, that voucher is good for anywhere in the country. But it's harder. You're kind of on your own, from folks I've talked to, if you're looking outside, if you just want to sort of leave Philly behind. But in terms of what happens at that site, that's still a bit up in the air. One of Tom's colleagues this week did break news that a settlement between the city and the owners is possibly near, and that settlement could potentially include using part of that site where the homes are now for affordable housing, and the rest could be used for market rate use. A lot of there's a lot of folks who fully expect that to be a life sciences use, given kind of its location in University
near, like,
City.
Drexel, like Drexel area,
Yeah, exactly. So that would make sense. I don't know, given inflation rates and other factors in the housing market or the real estate market, if that's still a good choice, but generally speaking, that's sort of what folks are expecting. So we'll see. I checked in with folks to see kind of where we are, because this lawsuit has been going on for 2 years now. There's been, some progress, and then it seems like that they take a couple steps back, they could take a couple steps forward, they could take a couple steps back. So it's sort of hard to know how close we are, but it seems that there is a resolution coming. The judge in that case has to sign off on the settlement, and that's supposedly could be coming in a couple weeks. So that doesn't help the folks that are still there or the folks that are looking for housing, but it does potentially settle the future of that land, which is incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm. Before we head out to the weekend, I like to end on some good news. And all this week on the show, we've dubbed it our Spring Fling Week. So we've talked about spring cleaning, spring activities you can enjoy, like birding and skating and salsa dancing in the park, which I really want to get into. But this story is just a perfect ending to the week. I read that in Philly Voice, the Philadelphia Streets Department is resuming mechanical street sweeping in 14 neighborhoods that have a high concentration of litter. And so the program, and from the Streets Department's website, the program is going to run from Monday, April 3rd through Friday, November 3rd. And yeah, the city is hosting, there's more community engagement involved. They're hosting some Zoom meetings next week about the project. And we'll have links and details for you, our listeners, to participate. But yeah, you can check that out, save those dates on your calendars, and yeah, look forward to more street cleaning. But as y'all know, living in Philly or, getting on SEPTA and, talking to folks, that also means that you're going to have to move your car. So you definitely don't want to get caught or get any fines for that. Tom Fitzgerald, transportation reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, thanks so much for joining me on CityCast Philly.
You're welcome, Trinae. It was a lot of fun. This is my first time, everyone.
Thanks for being. We got to get you back.
Thank you.
Aaron Moselle, housing and community development reporter for WHYY's Plan Philly. Great to see you again, and thanks so much for letting us know about these stories and joining us on CityCast Philly.
You got it. Thanks, Trinae.
It's time for the tip of the day, where we share a life hack for living in Philly. Is tax season giving you anxiety? Well, you can get some free support from Temple University this year. For the first time since the pandemic, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program will be held in person again. For qualifying low to moderate income individuals and families, you can make an appointment with a representative to walk you through those confusing tax documents. Sign up for an appointment now until April 15th. You can book one on Wednesdays or Saturdays between 1 and 5 p.m. by calling 215-326-9519 or emailing vita@temple.edu. They have appointments at the main campus and Ambler. If you have a tip of the day, we'd love to hear from you too. Call or text us at 215-259-8170. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Our lead producer is Mallory Falk. Our producer is Abby Fritz. Our Hey Philly newsletter editor is Brittany Valentine. And our host is me, Trinae Nuri. Music is by Philly's own Interminable, with additional music from All the Kimonos and James Weldon. If you enjoyed this episode and this week of spring activities, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter too. It's called Hey Philly. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend and be safe, y'all. Bye.